Welcome to Ambrose University Online Chapel for March the 11th, 2021. This morning we continue with our series on the day that changed my life. In this series, Ambrose faculty and staff are sharing stories about significant moments on their spiritual journeys. I'm finding these stories to be inspiring and encouraging. Sharing our stories of journeying with Jesus really do help us grow in our faith. You might even say that these stories are a masterclass on listening for and discerning vocation, the call of God in our lives. Today our speaker is Professor Angie Redecopp from our business program here at Ambrose University. And just a reminder that you can watch previous chapels in this series on our website at ambrose.edu/chapel. Now, before a song, hear the word of the Lord from Matthew's Gospel, calling us to our worship today. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
The Lord is my shepherd. He goes before me, defender behind me. I won't fear. I'm filled with anointing, my cup's overflowing. No weapon can harm me. I won't fear. Hallelujah, I am not alone. He's my comfort, always holds me close. He always guides me through mountains and valleys. His joy is refreshing, restores my soul. His mercy and goodness, His mercy gives me assurance that I'll see His glory face to face. Oh, hallelujah, I am not alone. He's my comfort, always holds me close. Your spirit lives within me, so I will walk in your peace. peace. Your spirit lives within me. My victory, my victory. Your spirit lives within me. So I will walk in your peace. Your spirit lives within me. My victory, my victory. Your spirit lives within me. So I will walk in your peace. Your spirit lives within me. My victory, my victory. Hallelujah. I am not alone. Oh, He's my comfort, always holds me close.
The day that changed my life. What a fun topic. Thanks, Terry, for asking me to speak on this. Thanks also to our chapel teams for continuing to bring us chapel, whether online like this one or in person. I have so appreciated the Ambrose chapels this term, particularly the in-person Tuesdays, as I'm not yet going in person at my church. For those that don't know me, I teach in the business program here at Ambrose, as well as in the community development minor, and have done so for a little over 5 years. I'm going to change the name of my talk slightly today. The day that did change my life and the day that didn't, but perhaps should have. The first one involves a drive down Crowchild Trail, and the second involves an avalanche in Kananaskis. First, the drive down Crowchild Trail. I would have been around 25 at the time. This was a heavy year for me. I was in the second year of a dual law and MBA program at U of C. I had sold my interest in a small business in Calgary about a year prior so that I could focus on my studies. I was unexpectedly, temporarily running a different business though, as my father had just died by way of suicide. I was the executor for his estate. I needed to wind up his business interests in Medicine Hat, about 3 hours southwest of here, as well as try to offer emotional support to both my mom and my stepmom, who were having a difficult time of things, to say the least. I was also in the end stages of a significant relationship. Back to Crowchild Trail. This was around the turnoff to Sarcee Trail in the northwest. I remember that it was raining quite hard. I think this was the only time in my life that I audibly heard the voice of God. Now, I'm not sure if it was actually audible or if it was just really distinct in my mind. I clearly heard God tell me, though, that I was His child. Let me tell you why this was significant. I was at a crossroads in my life. The end of the relationship that I mentioned also resulted in me leaving my church at the time. And it was all connected. Like many women I have talked to since then, some here at Ambrose, and like many millennials in recent years, according to Dr. Thiessen's book, The Meaning of Sunday, I was questioning my faith. Not questioning the roots of my faith. I'm a fairly practical person, and quite simply, I think there's too much evidence for a creator, and for that creator to be the God of the Bible, and for Jesus to have indeed lived and been resurrected, to doubt the fundamentals. However, I was questioning some of the secondary doctrines of the church, some of which didn't feel so secondary. A lot of this was around gender. I simply did not feel valued in my church as a female. At that time, and still in so many churches today, gender roles were still being taught and preached on, gender roles in the home, the church, the world. Now, this sermon isn't on gender roles. I've actually preached here on that before and would be happy to have conversations on the topic. I have rather strong convictions on that, as most of my students know. The confidence to speak up on those strong views and the confidence that I am indeed in the hand of God when I do speak out on that and other areas where the church or business needs to do better comes back to that moment on Crowchild Trail. God told me that I was His child. It didn't matter if the church fully valued me or even if I didn't feel fully valued by those close to me. Actually, it did matter, but my worth wasn't dependent on others. I was a child of God. That knowledge that I am a child of God, I am loved by God, I am valued by God, I am to boldly go forth and be used by God, has forever strengthened me as an individual. I love that song that we sometimes sing. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Some more of the lyrics are on the screen. I say these words to you too. If you are a Christian, you too are a child of God. If you have not yet made a claim of faith, God is calling you to be his child. I am a child of God. I am not defined by my church, my relationships, my friends. I am defined by my identity in God. Also, my work matters. At that time, I was studying to be a lawyer, and I went on to practice corporate law for several years before moving into the nonprofit world and then teaching here at Ambrose. My work was important. It didn't define me, but God calls us each to play a part in his kingdom. As an aside, I always cringe a bit when pastors or others say that when we get to the end of our lives, our work and what we did here on earth won't matter. I disagree. Our work, how we spend our time, how we use our gifts and talents that God gives us, matter. If we are focused on God and being used by him, all of our work and activities are in furtherance of God's kingdom, whether it is through meeting basic needs as a frontline worker, through teaching, preaching, the arts, the sciences, business. God can use it all, and it is important. Now for the day that didn't change my life, or at least not as much as one might expect, the Avalanche. If any of my finance students are watching, this slide that's going to come up and some of the story will be familiar as I used it to illustrate risk and reward in a recent class. We are fast forwarding several years from the day on Crowchild Trail. I was a corporate lawyer for several years, as I mentioned, and then I worked with a human rights organization, and now I'm teaching here. Along the way, I got married and had 2 kids who are now teenagers, and I became and am currently an active member of Center Street Church in the north part of town. This day takes place in May of 2019. My family, with the exception of my daughter who had a soccer game, and another family went out to do something called glissading on Mount Lawson in Kananaskis, near the old Fortress ski hill. You hike up a mountain and then you slide down snowy patches on your way down. We had ice picks on us just to slow our descents, but didn't perceive this as being particularly risky. We weren't in the backcountry. We were actually right off of Highway 40. We checked the avalanche reports before we went out. There were no caution signs. This news article on the screen just used a stock photo. In retrospect, though, the day developed into a perfect storm. There had been some recent snow, and the temperature was increasing throughout the day, particularly into the late afternoon, which is when we were coming down. Long story short, the 8 of us are spread out on the way down, ranging from about 200 to 500 meters from the bottom of a small valley. It's 5:15 in the afternoon. Some of us heard the avalanche coming down, others of us didn't. 4 of our group were able to jump to the side, while I and 3 others were swept down in the avalanche. We were all okay. Broken bones or significant head and face lacerations for the other 3, a few bruises for me, but we were all okay. My son went down the rest of the mountain about 2 kilometers to get help, on a broken leg, we learned afterwards. We were then airlifted out. Now this sounds pretty dramatic, and in the moment it was certainly scary. After the experience, I had a lot of people ask what it was like or what we were thinking as we were tumbling down in the snow. The actual experience feels a bit like I imagine it would feel like to be rolling about in a washing machine. I remember thinking that at the time. Perhaps I'm just not a very deep person, but my thoughts were fairly basic. I remember thinking that I should use my ice pick in some way. Eventually I lost that. I also remember thinking that I was glad my daughter wasn't there. I think I assumed that this was it as I was rolling down, but I don't recall any great epiphanies as a result. Now this only lasted a few seconds. I probably went down about 200 meters or so. Following that, there was about 5 minutes of uncertainty as we looked for and found the various members of the group. Again, no deep thoughts on my end. I think along the way that I was somewhat resigned to not necessarily finding all the members of the group. Of course, I was really happy that we did. Now, even afterwards, once everyone was out of the hospital and life was normal, and there was time to reflect, I didn't have any significant sense that life was any different. I note that the avalanche took place on the day before Mother's Day, so I was certainly grateful for my family. I felt blessed. I didn't come to any dramatic realizations, though. It wasn't until Terry asked me to do this chapel that I really thought further about that. Why wasn't this a more pivotal moment? Particularly as it was the only time in my life that I feared for the loss of my life or that of my family members. I've come to a few conclusions on that, one positive and one negative. On a positive note, I'm happy with my life. I have a loving family, good friends, a job that I enjoy, a good church, significant opportunities to be in the outdoors. most of the time, I feel that I'm in right relationship with God and that I'm living out His purpose for my life. I'm going to pause for a moment here. I want to emphasize the importance of relationships and being connected to others. I'm a busy person. Between my family, my work here at Ambrose, and my volunteer commitments at church and elsewhere, I struggle to find enough time for relationships beyond my immediate family, those that we do outdoor activities with, and my students. It is important though. I recall 2 close friends, both of whom I'm still friends with today, that I leaned on when my dad died and everything else was going on when I was younger. I think part of my conclusion after the avalanche, that I was okay with my world, was based on the solid relationships I had and my church network. I encourage you all to value your relationships and your networks, and I know that looks different for each person, especially during COVID. For some, it means lots of friends. For some, it is a few. I encourage you to work at it though, and if you're finding it hard to connect, try something different. Volunteer somewhere, join a club, talk to the person that's sitting next to you, which right now might be through the chat function on Zoom. My negative conclusion on this, though, as to why the avalanche didn't seem very pivotal, is I wonder if I've become complacent, if I've gotten too comfortable, too content with my past accomplishments. The heightened BLM movement last summer, continued challenges in churches as they navigate gender and other issues, spotlighted recently with the Ravi Zacharias scandal, work that still needs to be done in the areas of business and human rights, which is my research focus, the challenges that I see so many of our students and others in our community facing with COVID. That has gotten me to thinking, am I doing enough? Am I speaking up enough? Am I using my voice and my influence strategically? Am I hearing God? How about you? Wherever you have influence, are you using your voice in whatever situations that God is stirring a passion for you in? Are you seeing the needs of those sitting next to you? I also wonder if I'm still listening to God. As I reflect on this, I'm trying to be more attentive to the life lessons that I still need to learn. 2 of these come to mind. 1, people matter. Take care of your team, even when your leaders don't, which is from a book that we recently read in the business capstone class. Also, civility matters. Finding that balance between being strong and being kind is important. How about you? What life lessons are you learning right now? I leave you with this. I am a child of God. I am loved by God. I am valued by God. I am to boldly go forth and be used by God. You too are a child of God. You are loved by God. You are valued by God. You are to boldly go forth and be used by God. Thank you.